Good afternoon. It's Sunday, January 17th. I'm Ariel O'Sullivan, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Israel will continue to monitor Iran's activities and will take all necessary measures to maintain its security and defend itself. Those words straight from the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu shortly after a decade-old sanctions against Iran were lifted. More in this report from IBA's Margo Dudkevich.
The lifting of sanctions by 6 world powers against Iran will require an appropriate response to each Iranian violation. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office warned Iran has not abandoned its aspirations to acquire nuclear weapons and continues to destabilize the Middle East and spread terrorism throughout the world, the statement said. Other Israeli government officials expressed similar concerns. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, said the lifting of sanctions is like greasing the wheels of terrorism Iran is funding around the world. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani called the decision a golden page in history, a turning point for the country's economy, saying this morning everyone is happy with the deal except Israel, who he called the warmongers of the region, and some hardliners in the US Congress. The dramatic swing unfreezing tens of billions of dollars worth of Iranian assets, with global companies now able to conduct business with Tehran, came after the Vienna-based International Atomic Energy Agency officially confirmed Iran had carried out all measures required of the agreement reached in July last year, enabling implementation day to occur.
In line with its commitments, Iran will start to provisionally implement the additional protocol to its safeguards agreement with the IAEA. Together with other nuclear-related measures under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, this increases the agency's ability to monitor nuclear activities in Iran and to verify that they are peaceful.
After more than 2.5 years of intense multilateral negotiations, the International Atomic Energy Agency has now verified that Iran has honored its commitments to alter and, in fact, dismantle much of its nuclear program in compliance with the agreement that we reached.
In a further move, US President Barack Obama announced the release of 3 Iranian Americans charged with violating sanctions. And Iran agreed to release 5 Americans held in prison in Tehran, who were charged with undermining the Islamic Republic's state security. However, Jewish American Robert Levinson, missing for 9 years and believed to be held in Iran, was not included in the prisoner exchange. American officials insist Iran is committed to determining his whereabouts.
We have received confirmation that 5 Americans who had been unjustly detained in Iran have been released from custody, and they should be on their way home to their families before long.
At a joint press conference with Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini lauded the deal.
Today, we have achieved implementation day of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Ever since adoption day, we worked hard and showed mutual commitment and collective will to finally bring the JCPOA to implementation. Today, almost exactly 6 months after finalization of the historic deal, the International Atomic Energy Agency has verified that Iran has implemented its nuclear-related commitments under the JCPOA.
The Iranian foreign minister made a brief statement in English before talking to the Iranian people in Persian.
I'm going to do what I always do, read in Persian exactly what she said in English.
While the West celebrates a new dawn, US Republicans as well as Israel and Saudi Arabia continue to view the move with deep suspicion. Margo Dudkevich, IBA News.
The European Union is expected to pass a resolution that draws a distinction between Israel and the territories captured in the 1967 war, and this could lead to new sanctions against Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria. Israeli diplomats have been working feverishly to tone down the resolution, which is expected to be passed tomorrow at the conclusion of a summit of foreign ministers of the 28 member EU states. Prime Minister Netanyahu, in a speech to the foreign media in Israel, blasted the move. He also dismissed a call by the Swedish foreign minister to probe the killing of Palestinians by soldiers during the recent wave of violence as outrageous.
And then we get the absurdity of the EU in Brussels, from European soil, labeling the products of Israeli citizens, of Jews. And the last time that was done on the soil of Europe was over 70 years ago. At no other places, there are some 200 conflicts in the world with questions of territory. No other place is labeled except those of the Jewish state of Israel. I find that abhorrent. I think what the Swedish foreign minister said is outrageous. I think it's immoral, it's unjust, and it's just wrong. I mean, people are defending themselves against assailants wielding knives who are about to stab them to death, and they shoot the people? And that's extrajudicial killings? So why is San Bernardino not extrajudicial killings? And the other day in Paris, a knife-wielding terrorist was shot to death. Is that extrajudicial killings? Does the Swedish foreign minister suggest that there be examinations of what happened there in Paris or in the United States? This is definitely wrong, and it singles out Israel in an absurd way. This is, I don't know if this is, I don't want to call it by other names. I'll just say this is an absurdity. And it's outrageous.
Joining us now from our Tel Aviv studio is Dr. Emily Landau, head of the Arms Control Program at the Institute for National Security Studies. Dr. Landau, turning out to the Iranian deal, it's an official deal, it's done. Maybe it's not as dangerous and flawed as we think.
Well, the portion of the deal that we're now seeing implemented is something that shouldn't surprise us. I mean, this was the heart of the deal that was announced last July. And this is the only way that Iran was going to get the sanctions relief, which was the only reason that Iran was at the table in the first place. Iran had three basic things to do in order to get sanctions relief. One is to reduce stockpile to 300 kilograms, to take out a significant amount of centrifuges, not to dismantle them, by the way, even though Secretary of State Kerry defined it that way, but rather to remove them, put them in storage, and to change the heart of the reactor at Arak. So, you know, this step is being hailed as if it's some dramatic change and some dramatic indication of Iranian cooperation, whereas, in fact, it was, you know, the fulfillment of the conditions that Iran needed to fulfill in order to get significant sanctions relief. And I think on this count, Iran was clear about the fact that the international community was serious. All the other problems with the deal, with Iran's behavior since the deal was announced last July, all of that remains. The fact that the weaponization aspects of Iran's program, there was a report last month that finally determined that Iran had worked on a military nuclear program up until 2003 in a coordinated effort, up until 2009 at least, and the file was closed. So these are the other parts of the deal and Iran's behavior that we need to keep our eye on.
Well, Dr. Landau, we know what this means for Iran, but what are the ramifications of lifting these sanctions for the whole international community?
The ramifications are very significant. I think what the Obama administration, their message in this regard is what we heard basically again from U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, that with the release or with the lifting of these sanctions, there is now a horizon for the Iranian citizens, for the population in Iran. I don't know if there's any evidence on the ground to support that view, that these resources will be redirected inward in order to improve the economic situation of the Iranian population. I think there's much more evidence to support the assessment that we're going to see actually these resources diverted to continuing to build up Iran's military power, support of terrorism, and indeed probably will go to the continued development of those aspects of Iran's nuclear program that it is allowed to continue even under the terms of the deal.
But what should Israel's strategy be now? Should it be to sort of like, if you can't beat them, join them sort of attitude?
I didn't hear the end.
What should Israel's strategy be now? If you, sort of maybe if you can't beat them, join them?
I think Israel's strategy needs to get back to very close conversations with the U.S. administration first and foremost, with the current administration, and of course with the administration that will come into power in early 2017. I think there are a lot of aspects of this deal. There are holes, there are weaknesses, loopholes. There are things that need to be addressed. There are questions that need to be addressed. We need to think about, for example, the scenario in 10 to 15 years when the deal will sunset. What will happen then? How will the international community deal with Iran then, especially when we know that there has been no strategic reversal or strategic U-turn as far as Iran's nuclear ambition. So there are a lot of questions that can be addressed now. It will need, Israel getting back to the place where they can have these very important and focused discussions with the United States and with other members of the P5+1.
Dr. Landau, thank you so much for telling us all this insight and for being with IBA News. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Police are now investigating who was responsible for spray painting an anti-Christian graffiti, including "Death to Christians, Enemies of Israel," on the walls and doors of the Old City's Domitian Abbey on Mount Zion overnight. A statement issued by the Abbey said the inscriptions are not only against Jesus, but call for slaughter of Christians and send them to hell. Police said security forces patrolling in the city of David also discovered graffiti on the walls of the hospice showing the Star of David and a dagger covered with blood. The director of Tag Meir, which opposes price tag attacks, urged the government to crack down on perpetrators with more vigor.
We informed the police. We took pictures of the graffiti, and of course we try to understand what the message. And we understand very quickly it's not a nice message. There's like death to the Christians or revenge for Israel.
We're calling the government of Israel, the police, to start act. This is Domitian. This is the first time. They have cameras. They know we are in the year of 2015. There is a police station 200 meters from here. Come on. Because this is a shame. It's a shame. It's, this is not the way a Jewish democratic state should behave.
Still no definitive conclusion as to the fate of the mega supermarket chain. All of the chain's branches were closed today when mega employees will come out in full force to protest the plans to shut down. This afternoon, hundreds of workers demonstrated outside the offices of Shraga Biran, one of the firm's owners, demanding that he invest more money and save the chain from bankruptcy. The financially strapped firm, considered Israel's second largest supermarket chain, is now seeking protection from creditors after last-ditch efforts to obtain payment agreements with suppliers have failed. The retailer has an estimated workforce of about 3,500 and has so far not been able to find any potential buyer. Palestinian Authority security forces have arrested an aide who worked for chief negotiator Saeb Erekat and is suspected of collaborating with Israel. The unnamed official is suspected of spying for the Jewish state and supplying it with diplomatic information regarding strategies for negotiations. Erekat said the person, whom was employed in his office for nearly 2 decades, held administrative positions, but was not among his close advisors or considered to be a senior official. The suspect was under surveillance for months until the authorities collected evidence against him, leading to his arrest 2 weeks ago. The man previously worked for the PLO Executive Committee before moving to the Negotiations Affairs Department. The Foreign Ministry says it will cease all contact with Education Minister Naftali Bennett until he apologizes for comments he made last week in a radio interview. Speaking with Tel Aviv Radio, Bennett said there is a deep problem with the DNA of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, referring to the ministry's former Director General Alon Liel, who Bennett said is doing everything he can to isolate the country. Bennett's remarks came just days after Deputy Foreign Minister Tzipi Chotovely accused Liel of using his status as a former senior diplomat to engage activists of the NGO Breaking the Silence to act against Israel abroad. Responding to the uproar, Bennett's office released a statement saying his remarks specifically referred to those who act against Israel, citing Alon Liel as an example and not the ministry workers. Avichai Mendelblit will officially take over the position of the country's 14th Attorney General on the 1st of February. This after the High Court today rejected petitions by the Movement of Quality Government and the Omitz NGO, who tried to block the appointment. Mendelblit, who currently serves as the Cabinet Secretary, will replace outgoing Attorney General Yehuda Weinstein, who held the post for the past 6 years. His appointment was unanimously approved by the Cabinet, which voted in his favor despite the fact that he was the sole candidate. His selection sparked opposition from numerous NGOs, which came out against the Appointment Selection Committee for suggesting only one candidate instead of 3, as it was mandated to do. Last-minute negotiations between the Histadrut Labor Federation and the Egged Bus Company are underway in an effort to prevent a nationwide strike by bus drivers scheduled to start tomorrow morning. Histadrut officials say the main bone of contention surrounds the bus drivers' demands for higher wages, as they insist that their salaries are among the lowest in the public sector. In response, the chairman of the Egged Bus Drivers Union insisted that drivers will no longer tolerate unilateral steps at their expense. And as we get off to a fresh start of the week, here are some good things that may make you feel good about or maybe make you a little proud. Aliyah from Western Europe is at an all-time high. Starting today, bureaucracy may ease up a bit with the end of faxes. The Cabinet approved the use of digital means of communications, instructing the public services to accept documents through means other than faxes. For those traveling to or from Israel, there is a possible end to losing or misplacing luggage with the launching of a new Israeli-designed hands-free suitcase that can follow you around. Over 40 emergency professionals from around the world arrived in the country to share latest developments and information regarding health system readiness for disasters and emergencies. And Israel's homegrown basketball sensation Omri Caspi has once again scored an amazing 17 points in one game, leading his NBA team Sacramento Kings to a win over the Los Angeles Clippers last night. Taking a look at the local finance, and with no currency trading on Sundays, the shekel remains the same, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were down. Here's a look at the late afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather now, and get ready, here it comes, the winter again. The forecast is calling for a dramatic drop in temperatures, strong winds, hazy skies, and dust storms in the south. Rain is expected in the north and it will spread to the center of the country by tomorrow. Here are the expected highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. That brings us to the end of this broadcast of IBA News. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow when Laura Cornfield will be here to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. Same time, same channel. Till then, I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.